Good morning, Stan. Well, let's just, when you get ready, pass it on. I got a whole bunch of stuff I've given that to the builder. Good morning, Ken. What?
Oh, it's just a letter in support of the efforts.
Sure. Good, thank you. So I'll tell you what, I'll just make it up, well, I'll call on you.
Okay.
I don't know, I think we've got a busy agenda, but let's take a minute to make sure we get a chance to have a conversation.
It's quick. I'm gonna have to leave early, so don't take it personally.
Well, you know,
Not storming out on me.
It's something you
we
said.
will neither boo you or take offense with you, need to
All right.
leave early. So stand on the agenda under phase 2. We've got right-of-way summit strategies I've added Lad Hill Association.
Super. Much appreciated. But that's.
Good morning.
Morning, Stan.
How are you?
You running the camera?
Good. Can I assume that you've seen this? And I will leave that with you. Of the land that Providence and the Park District, they have an agreement on. This is the one that was brought up in their meeting. Have you seen this map?
No, if I have, it's been a long
Then
time.
let me give that to you.
Okay.
There's the ones that lose. This is the current trace, not the one that Google and Worth it goes, but those are the pools that they lose. They estimate 2.5 pools, and their estimated cost, whether it's $450 per pool. So if they do something new with their architect, this is not county owned, but this is in the county. This is in our urban reserve, and there's the city. Presumably, a really good architect can come in here, their pool in year 1 or 2, and not have that 450. This is urban reserve. This is the county. You can operate a golf course in the county. This is urban reserve. let me, this is yours, so for discussions, I swear and stuff, so.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm Joe, and with the city of Newbury.
Oh, I'm Yvonne Miller.
Oh, hi.
I used to be on the council with
Oh,
them,
good.
but I've been with this for a long time.
All right.
You just
Good morning, how are you?
Good.
You just got started.
Just started, yep. Can't get any, and it's pretty newer than I am, so a little over a month now.
Gonna be, first.
Do you like it here?
I do. This is all by design and kind of coming back to Oregon. We've been away up managing in Washington, a little stint in Alaska, because our daughter was up there. Yeah, it's home. Great.
There's no place else.
There is. Yeah, so what brought you first to Denver?
My parents.
Okay, yeah, see how that
They
happened.
moved here when I was 4.
Wow.
I was in the 4th grade.
Oh, wow. What did your parents do?
Well, it was so long ago, they were mostly laborers.
Uh-huh, okay.
Now, there was food processing, water processing plant, I think,
Uh-huh.
and it was there.
Oh, good,
And
okay.
it was very seasonal.
Yeah, well, that makes it tough. Yeah. Wow. And how about you? What have you done
Oh,
since you've been in Dundee?
I worked for 50 years for the Chevrolet dealer. Well, actually, a little over 50. I saw several different dealers during that period.
So what have been your cars over the years?
Chevrolet.
All of them.
Well,
Did
my
you keep,
husband would have loved to have sports cars, but the budget.
you didn't get a
allowed.
Corvette for him?
No.
Oh, my gosh, no
Oh,
Corvette?
gosh, yeah. No.
Have you seen Lawrence since he left?
Haven't talked to him. Have you?
No. I didn't even know he was selling. I had to call one of the girls I worked with that worked there. She's back in South Carolina now, and I had to call her to find out.
I got your email. I'm still gonna. I'll do it when I get around to it. I've just been busy the last week.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not ignoring it.
I appreciate it. I didn't feel ignored.
Okay.
How are you, Mike?
I'm good, it's good. Very good.
All right.
Joe, how are you doing today?
Yeah, let me ask you, that thing with Stephen asked you is that,
Mary Andrews is not gonna be here, so.
No, we don't have John. Yeah, I mean, the property people.
What's up here today?
subcommittee?
We can make a response to ODOT that's saying we don't have board approval. No, we can't act for the board, but we can make a response. It's basically, once it's all set,
Okay, all right.
I didn't want to bring order to it until we knew what was set. So, we're moving. But you had it down for a meeting.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to go and just, give feedback, and particularly about,
Morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm here.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, it's just really through.
Isn't that what moves us forward?
Good morning.
Okay.
People tell me, Dave, have you ever gotten
Good morning.
Hey, how are you? How's life?
I'm great. Busy?
Yeah,
How about you?
really good.
We all work
Oh, yeah. Lately, lots of stuff. Podcasts, video streaming. We're doing the statewide metrics network now. The Eagle. So we're rolling that out. It's an online radio station with news and information. Statewide interest for veterans. So auxiliary and forest crew over Ontario is doing something. We can interview and talk about it. Put it on the radio, which is an online radio station 24/7. Listen to it on your smartphone. And then a podcast on that. So we've got in Newburgh. There's going to be a equine outreach for veterans. Is coming up soon. We're talking about. So you can listen to an interview on a podcast online, or you can listen to an online radio station, which is 24/7, just like KOYC. Just listen
This
to
is
it
the
on
most we know.
advertising.
Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll get more people involved in
He
it.
had a hand sketch at the
But
end.
yeah, it's going.
Like,
What's that? Oh, it is. It's like anything else when you start up. But yeah, we've got all the bills paid. Oh, no, you can't. So, maybe sometime we have to do it. Yeah, maybe it should.
red is the entity half of it. Under the word proposal. This was
How often is your show? Oh, every 2 years. Oh, every 2 years.
the red line. But, yeah, the yellow is
Well, and when you run for office, we can pull you off the air. Because,
Did you talk to him?
well, I guess we're not doing
So what
so
makes-
we don't have to furnish on it.
So the gray over. That's what they're Well, I think just that, right? Yeah, and really the vague awareness that there's CPR doing that, because that, you don't get
You know,
right.
So, yeah, it's, I guess it's all coming up, but I'm really working on it. No, it's straight through the next 3
And that's different than this.
Maybe with that big splash of water they had.
next 4 months will be,
Our designer, perhaps the same people have been trying to build that over the biggest spot in Chelsea. Doing flowers. So our action today is based on.
try not to talk about it.
Well, actually, I still think it's gives me pause. I think it's more that, because I don't think we know exactly what the final is going to be. So I would think it's more, I think it's more a generic discussion about whether it is gonna be outside the borders, it is going to impact CPR, it is going to impact the FEIS. We don't know the exact footprint of that impact. Because I hear that dialogue still going on. So we need to develop a policy response as opposed to a specific footprint. Well, I'm not sure. You guys decide if you want to make that policy.
Don't give them, give us, just give them just a good reason and we're gonna.
Good morning.
Well, I've never watched it. Good. So, I'll tell you the surprise of it is, they were having lunch at Beaver's. They were at the park, they were outside, and I sat there. So, he was telling me he spent the most expensive lunch he's ever had in his life. He got a new car. And said, I see the price you see right now, the worthless, the other parties was younger. So I said, I gotta get up. I got up, turned around, and looked at him, he was sitting right there. Honest, I'd walk with glory. So I got a chair, sat out of this with him for like 4 or 5 minutes. I did talk about Parkway. They spent the night at the So then, and Glory said, what a great boyfriend you guys have been.
Yeah.
Great newspaper, hardly ever uses
We can do anything, as long as you're willing to pay. We walk on the road, right?
to order of the Yamhill County Parkway Committee of July 20th, 2016. We have a quorum, and so we also have minutes of prior sessions of April 21st and May 19th that have been distributed for your review. Are there corrections or additions?
Move approval.
We have a motion and we have a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We've got a lot of things to cover, and I'm delighted that the people that are gonna help us do that are here this morning. We've got Tim and Kelly here from ODOT, and a lot of work to do on what's happening on the phase 2 right away. Michelle Jaguar is here to talk about where we are on lobbying and strategies for just a moment as we have this conversation, and so we're delighted to have you here this morning, Michelle. And we'll report on where we are on that lobbying funding effort. So with that, Tim?
Sir.
We've all been anxious to hear about the continued conversation. I think the committee generally is aware that the Department of Transportation has put the phase 2 in the STIP and has allocated the $10.5 million for that. One of the conditions to that was that if ODOT were to put in its project savings from phase 1, that they wanted confirmation that the locals would put their project savings. I can tell you that the tribe, the county, all three municipalities unanimously voted to move their project savings from phase 1 into phase 2. So between Wilsonville Road and the $10.5 million that are additional phase 2 savings that will go into the right-of-way for the STIP, that's somewhere around $17 or $18 million that are being allocated into moving phase 2 forward. It's a great step. As a part of that, Tim, there's been a conversation about the clinic, the Oregon Clinic, and how that impacts the phase 2 right-of-way. And obviously, Mayor Andrews, Mayor Olson are not here today, but people have been working hard to say, is there a solution? Director Garrett said work hard to find a solution to both preserve the construction of the Oregon Clinic and to move the phase 2 work forward. So with that kind of a brief bio on the status, talk to us a little bit about what really are the intricacies of the phase 2 right away.
Yeah, it actually even goes above Director Garrett. The OTC instructed us to have these conversations with the landowners, the Worth properties and the Oregon Clinic around trying to honor the signed purchase agreement between those two. The Worths had arranged for a sale of a piece of the property that does impact the right-of-way corridor. And so we're trying to figure out, can we keep that moving forward, alter the corridor around them, and still keep the project on track and moving forward. So to that end, we had a meeting early July with kind of all parties. There were a lot of folks there, a dozen of us around the table, representatives from Newburgh, Dave was there, the Worth family, ODOT, and we just started open discussions about what are the impacts of trying to route around that building if we, in the end result. And it resulted in a pretty open conversation about what they felt they could do on the property, how it would have to be reoriented, some of the development codes or development issues that might come up with the city's requirements, issues that ODOT would have. So we left that meeting with kind of all of us had an assignment to go kind of refine what we know. We started a two-way dialogue with the Oregon Medical Clinic and our designers to try and completely finish the layout and get well-defined what the impact would be outside the corridor. And this impact primarily would fall on CPRD, the golf course, the Chehalis Parks and Rec golf course. So Mr. Ragsdale was there, and the assignment for CPRD was to take that information and determine what that impact was going to have on the golf course, how that would impact their future layout, their future operations, et cetera. I don't think that's occurred yet, so we're still trying to figure out that piece of it. And then I think probably the first week in August, we're all going to get back together with what we know. As I'm sure you can imagine, that's still fairly dynamic. The engineers, as late yesterday, were still sending files back and forth about what about this, what about that. I don't know, Mike, can you give us an update on where the
Yes, CPRD was asked to come back with a response to the alignments that have been proposed.
And by the way, I've got example what the alignment was at that meeting. It's changed subtly since then. Wrap this around. I don't know if there's enough copies to go around, but I can describe. I'm gonna keep going, Stanis. I can actually describe what we see. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
So CPRD, because of vacation schedules, we couldn't meet last week. We were asked to have a response by sometime this week. We have a meeting with a small group of us today at 10 o'clock to determine our reactions to this. I don't have anything further at the time. You should know that the original alignment took a little bit of the golf course, and there was already an agreement in place about how that was going to be addressed. This new alignment changes that, makes it much more complicated, and then the fact that there are alignments that aren't on this. We're working from this piece. We understand that Tim and his staff are working with the Worth family to reduce this impact. We will not have that in front of us. So our reaction will be to this alignment and philosophy. What we're evaluating and what we'll be able to respond to is how much impact does this have on the balance of the golf course? Do we have to, if we do this, do we have to move holes and another hole and another hole, and what's the total impact? Until we have a final alignment, we can't come in with conclusive information. So we'll develop a policy, kind of a reaction in general to this strategy. We'll have it to Tim this afternoon.
And Mike touched on an issue that also is part of this ongoing discussion. As he said, the original alignment in the FEIS and through all the agreements had figured out that there was going to be an impact to hole 2 in the future vision of phase 2 as it was. This new impact, because that alters that impact, probably entails reopening the FEIS and having discussions with Federal Highway about how substantial is that reopening of that FEIS. How does it affect the record of decision? How does it affect the Section 4F, which has to do with recreational impacts to recreational grounds? In the FEIS, our impacts were determined to be de minimis, so they were small enough that Federal Highways didn't require a huge level of mitigation, and partly that was because of the agreement that we worked out with CPRD. We don't know if we'll still be able to maintain that de minimis impact with this new change, and that's until we figure out what that is. Federal Highway has withheld an opinion. They said, we want to know exactly what it is before we'll give you any view of that. So we've had that dialogue also in this last 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm sure there's 1,000 questions, and I could probably try and just talk and answer them, but it might be better just to open it up and
Well, let's do that then. So Tim, if you take this proposed new alignment, the question then is would the Federal Highway also say even this is a minimal impact and wouldn't require mitigation? Is that part of the conversation?
absolutely.
But if that were if they made that determination, would it require a reopening of the FEIS?
Yeah. Now, keep in mind that all of environmental documents have a shelf life, if you will, and it's about every 5 years. If you have an extended project and you have another piece of it opens up that you want to work on 5 years down the road, for instance, you have to revisit that document and describe what changed in the intervening period. We're going to be in that situation no matter what, because the document was signed in 2012. So whatever we do with phase 2, we would have to go back to Federal Highway and say, these were our original assumptions around environmental and built environment impacts. We don't think this has changed, or this has changed a small amount, et cetera. We'll have to have that conversation and write a document around that regardless. What we don't know is with this amount of change, whether that gets bigger. You know, how much more substantial is that reevaluation?
Okay. Questions?
Mike, has there been any additional conversations with Providence
No.
at this point? That's on the tickler list, though, that may have to happen.
That may have to happen, yeah. But it depends on depends on a lot of things.
So, Tim, my understanding schedule-wise, you might talk about this a moment. Director Garrett asked this whole review to take place, and I think I recall an expectation that in September sometime.
Yeah,
So what needs to happen, and how's this all move forward, and I'll report it back?
Our expectation from the commission was to provide them an update. While they do have, they've put the $10.5 million in as for phase 2, and they've authorized pre-purchase of right-of-way, or protective purchase of right-of-way, et cetera. What they did say is hold off until you resolve this issue. So their expectation is we come back to them and tell them where we're at with this issue, and we're not going to move forward with anything until we do that update. Our goal, and it's more or less given us by Sonny, my boss, Sonny Chickering, is to do that in September. There was not a hard deadline from the commission, but both he and Director Garrett felt that was a reasonable timeline. So we're kind of under that gun, which means we need to pretty much have the position figured out by mid-August, because we have to prepare all the documents so that it's ready for the September commission meeting on the third week of September.
That's the 19th, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, so it's generally a month before that, we have to have the documents to the commission staff.
So one of the conversations at that meeting on this issue was designs and any fatal flaws. So it sounds like we've got an issue with CPRD, but your folks, your design people, they're in the middle of this. What are the kinds of things that they all do that might impact this?
Well, what Jerry Rosenblatt, the roadway designer, is doing is laying out at the appropriate curvature. In other words, he's trying to maintain the design at the same speed thresholds, if you will, that was already in the design. So that's kind of his bottom line: is can I fit in this new impact area an alignment that meets our engineering requirements? And so far, it sounds as though he can. He hasn't discovered any engineering fatal flaws or anything that requires a major compromise from an engineering standpoint.
So let me just update the committee on why I was there. Really what you got is an issue that involves the right-of-way. It's in the city of Newburgh. It involves a Newburgh potential business, and it involves Newburgh impacts, but it involves obviously the whole project. And the question is, can you have every jurisdiction around in there? And so I think the comment was no. And in fact, I talked to Mayor Russell about that very point. And so I really saw my participation as to be the voice of question and discussion by this whole group from Dundee south, if you will, and all of our stakeholders. And so I made the point to the group at that meeting that we've had a lot of local entities that have and are just voted again to contribute more money to the projects. And that, I think you can fairly say that everybody would like to have an accommodation that would allow the city of Newburgh to have this business with a lot of employment. And that's a very important and significant issue for, for all of us, and we were here because we've all looked out for each other in these projects. But the questions that I raised is what would be the impact if you need to, in any way, reopen the FEIS, Federal Environmental Impact Study? What are the unintended consequences of that action in terms of the timing of the project, risks to the project from challenges we've already have addressed and have gotten by, and now do we go back and revisit some of those issues, and how this all affects funding? And one of the questions I asked, can the federal highway, if they decided there's minimal impact, make the adjustment to the EIS without reopening it? And even if they did, is there some potential that some other party may say, we don't agree that you can do that? And once again, we get back into the legal issues of the FEIS, which we spent a lot of years and a great deal of money getting approved. And there wasn't an answer for that. And I would say, I think, Tim, you might comment, because my recollection is your people were going to be visiting with Federal Highway about some of those questions. And of course, without knowing the design and the impact, we're a little early, but can Federal Highway even do that if it's another de minimis impact, to say, yeah, we can sign it off and it's bulletproof?
Well, I think they can sign off on the de minimis impact. The bulletproof is a different question, because I think we're going to be faced with a reevaluation anyway, where we identify differences in impact over what we originally anticipated. That will reopen at least a discussion about whether our interpretation of those differences is real. In other words, the record of decision kind of draws a line in the sand and put on record that we've acknowledged the levels of impact that were disclosed in the FEIS. Anything we do in the reevaluation will be based against that line in the sand that says, you know, at this point we knew this, now we think it's changed to this plus X. That plus X part will have to be publicly disclosed, will have to go through the public process, and will be open to challenge. That's always the case when you open up an environmental document. But it won't reopen prior to the 2012 decision. In other words, only what's happened since then, the period that we're reevaluating for. At least that's my understanding of it.
But changing alignment is a difference. That is a change.
Yeah, but again, and I know I've talked to this group before about this. We've been down this road on other major environmental documents. The freeway through Salem, we revisited and reevaluated that document 5 or 6 times in the 25 years that it took us to build all of those changes. And there were significant changes through the course of that. We changed the whole configuration of the interchange at Kubler in the middle of that process. So it's not unheard of that occurs, because it's always based on what you knew in the past, not what you know today. So, I think we're going to be faced with the reevaluation anyway. As we refine whatever happens in phase 2, we would be doing some change over that anyway. We tried to make the footprint large enough to accommodate whatever interchange we did up at Rex Hill, for instance, but is that the final interchange that we lay out there? I can't foresee. We think it is, but something might change, in which case we'd have to reevaluate how that changed. So I don't think that's an insurmountable hurdle. The alignment itself isn't the fatal flaw, the alignment change. I think what we've got to evaluate is then what impact does that have, what risk does that open ODOT and basically the public that wants the project to. And those are going to be the things that we put in front of the commission and say, to move forward down this path has X amount of risk, to stay within the existing alignment has a different impact. And it, right now we know that to be, we could potentially eliminate the prospect of jobs and some development in Newburgh, and that's what we're weighing it against. Those are real impacts that are on the table today.
Okay. Another question that I raised at the meeting was if as a part of changing that alignment, it says in some way you have to reopen, even though it may be not a major issue, but reopen that FEIS process. I'd ask Michelle to comment. We're also in the middle of funding opportunities on the federal and the state level. The state, we all know that legislative package is being put together as we speak. There was a meeting last night in Eugene by that committee that is looking at what does a transportation bill look like and who's going to be in it. And does that create some potential significant risks or uncertainty in our own fundraising efforts?
Well, from the standpoint of trying to get any amount of significant funding for Phase 2 into either the governor's proposed transportation package or what the legislature is going to come up with, if there's any uncertainty about the project, I can say pretty clearly that it will not get funding. The projects that are going to go into that package will be projects that the legislature has complete confidence that are ready to move forward. And I think the same with the governor. From the basic kind of initial parameters that have been laid out by both the governor and some of the key legislators on this special joint transportation committee that's been established that Dave referenced, met last night in Eugene, met a couple weeks ago in Hermiston. They are looking at projects that are ready to go, that have broad support, that reduce congestion, that address resiliency in the situation with an earthquake or a tsunami in terms of safe routes, safe structures. They're looking at making sure that major bridges in the state are resilient from a seismic standpoint. So they're going to be prioritizing really important projects. The Oregon Transportation Forum is an ad hoc group that has all kinds of stakeholders in it, truckers and cities and counties and private businesses and chambers of commerce and lots of different stakeholders on it. They're still developing their document to provide guidance that they think is important to both the legislators and to the governor's office. One of the things right now it's still in draft form, it's not complete, but one of the things they've put in there so far in draft is that there should be a priority on completion of projects that are already underway, so that if there are phased projects, those projects should be completed. But that's not a final document yet. So going into the legislature to be looking at really precious resources, especially where, gas tax increases may be involved. New fees will have to be established, some way of funding a major transportation package. I don't think the legislators are going to be willing to put any funding toward projects that have any degree of uncertainty or challenge, particularly any potential legal challenge. So I think the timing that Tim and Kelly laid out in terms of Sonny Chickering wanting to make sure that they can report back to the commission in September is actually really, really important, because October, November, December are very, very, very busy times for pulling together not only the governor's budget, but her proposed transportation funding package and the conclusion of the work that this joint special transportation committee of legislators is working on. Did that answer your question okay? Well, also with regard to, I think you also asked about the federal situation, because we continue to work on the federal side. And as you're aware,
consideration was given this time around for the new federal transportation law is called FAST, the FAST Act. It created a new program, and that is now called the Fast Lane Grants. As part of the work that you all did, and supporting the work that we do in Washington, D.C., the Newburgh-Dundee bypass was named a high-capacity corridor priority project in that program, which is important and puts you in a really good position for competitive grants. Working with ODOT earlier on this year, when that first round of grants came out this year, we weren't quite ready to go for that. But if this project is moving forward the way it is right now with Phase 2, I believe it would be a great project for the Fast Lane Grant Program and or the Tiger Grant Program in the federal funding next year. So we really need to have some certainty on this project for both the Salem funding side and the federal funding side.
Questions? Scott?
Yes, since I don't understand half of what I read, could you explain to me how this is impacted from what we have now?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I realized as folks talking about it, I didn't describe what was in front of you. What we've got is the lines in yellow, the kind of dashed line, is the corridor as defined in the FEIS today. So the red alignment that goes through there is 2 lanes laid into that corridor of what we envisioned to be eventually a 4 lane. So to the, kind of fill up that corridor, that there'd be 2 parallel lanes to what you see there now. The suggestion from the Worth family is overlaid in a very faint gray line that if you have the words facing to you correctly, if you start on the left side, it starts departing the corridor underneath where it says Worth Family LLC, and it's the property boundary of the lot is 6501. So you can see that gray line kind of crosses the boundary there, and then proceeds on to the right side of the drawing, which is to the northeast, and kind of curves back in and essentially rejoins the yellow line right where the property for Providence Medical Center begins. The additional impact over what was originally envisioned is shown in hashed lines and then double crosshatched lines. All of that is impact that would not have been in our original document. I take that back. The single hatch lines are impact that were not in our original document. The double crosshatched is a change to the alignment, but it's within our original footprint. So there's no impact there. But as kind of we alluded to, there's been changes to this in the ensuing 2 weeks. So right now, I would kind of take this as a concept only. It's lines on a map, but nothing's chiseled down yet.
Which lot was sold? Which lot was the agreement to sell?
The one labeled 2022, kind of in the center of the drawing, Worth Family LLC, and so it kind of at the intersection of Providence Drive and Worth Boulevard, if you can note it there, and it's right next to the Newburgh Nursing Home LLC. So
Tim,
this up, it's right there.
So that's the clinic, you're saying that's the clinic property?
That's correct.
My understanding is it was this other property labeled 3900.
now actually it was 2022, kind of to the left portion of 6503 and then 6502. are the discussions that we've had with the Oregon Clinic, with the
Yeah,
Wood
yeah,
family.
they're
were
gonna re-alter the lot lines, but you're right, it kind of pushes down into that.
So it's not 3900? Wow,
It was really,
that's, I
it
was,
was this one, and a portion of this one.
really, okay, I could have been 99% sure that's what.
And there was a little bit, there's a little bit of this as well. There was a sliver piece that was going up along paralleling Providence Drive that they were gonna purchase, but really they weren't gonna improve it. They need to have a driveway taking out to Providence, and just thinking landscape.
Okay. So it's 2022 is where the clinic would go?
Yeah, and then
you're
down-
also gonna be buying 6502.
Yeah, you can see the gray line where it crosses
Yeah,
650, so I assume it's to the north of that gray line, you know.
Okay.
So Tim, the FEIS currently that was approved is inside the yellow lines. and-
Well, you know, the more I look at this, I think it also includes the dark blue line that shows, that's all of the Worth family property boundaries. When they did lot line adjustments, they adjusted to what so that they could develop everything to the north, they actually realigned all of their lot lines around what was approved corridor. And I believe all of that in the blue, I'm not positive, now that I say that, whether it's the blue line or the yellow line. What I do know is our road layout is within the yellow line.
Okay.
The approved
but-
corridor may be
So I'm just trying
down to
to,
the blue line because we're only seeing the additional impact where the crosshatches are.
that based on that, then the actual part that would be outside of the current approved FEIS is just this piece here that falls within that gray line.
That's correct, Stan.
So
The-
we're
the
talking
single-
a few hundred yards at the most.
Well, yeah, it's, I think something just shy of 4 acres in this concept. And I don't know, where it's gonna end up, but
So if I heard you correctly initially, you said that things that were approved inside the FEIS in 2012, that anything we need to secure, it can't be challenged up to 2012, but 2012 forward, is that correct?
in the reevaluation document, any of our assumptions could be challenged.
And all of this that we're talking about that currently is inside that gray line is part of CDRD?
That's correct.
And Mike, I think you indicated that your meeting today is going to be looking at it, impacts based upon this drawing, not some other drawings that may be in play that you haven't seen.
Yep.
So, I think at the meeting that we had some time ago, you indicated that also we're going to need to be some review by the golf course design people to see what impacts, has any of that been started?
There've been discussions with our design people about this alignment, that'll be discussed internally today. But there's been no detail because we don't have them fixed. The real issue on that is what impact does it have on other parts of the golf course? Does it cause a ripple effect of like falling dominoes, so you have to make changes on greens and holes and fairways all the way through the golf course or not? Until we get a fixed alignment, we're not gonna start their meters, but we've had some conversations about them, about what's the impact of this generally going to be. So our response today would be more of a policy response than a specific detailed response.
Tim, can any of the golf course be located within the right of way? I I know you're bringing up.
My gut reaction would be no, but I don't know.
I mean,
I don't
with
think
some kind of cooperative agreement, because I know you're gonna move those the lanes, down a little bit to, accommodate that property, but, they still would not be actually crossing the golf course. It's, any more so than what was originally intended. I'm just curious as to.
Yeah,
If that would be a
generally,
possibility.
I know when we purchase right away for transportation purposes, we try not to have any other uses on that property. So, and a golf course by its nature, there's things flying around that you wouldn't want. I mean, the way I did it would be serious hazard.
But with sufficient fencing, Tim, even you can.
Well, but again, that's our right-of-way boundary would be where that fencing would want to be.
No, I just curious, as part of trying to minimize the impact standpoint of going back.
I understand, and I think, again, my response is I think no, but.
Maybe signage that says, no slicing allowed.
Yeah.
Well, they can take 2 or 3 of those holes and find the tape. Then I might be able to get under par, or at least under 100, I'd say.
Well, you and I probably wouldn't be a very good test of how close you can get to that right-of-way, Commissioner, with the golf ball. So there's another meeting coming up for a further conversation about where this stands. I think, Kelly, you'd indicated, and so there's an ongoing dialogue. I point that out as nobody's asking for a decision today because we really don't have enough information to make one. We particularly missed the attendance of Mayors Olson and Andrews, and they're both at a League of Mayors meetings and could not be here today, and I knew that. So there's more to come, and both from your design people, there's more to come from Federal Highway, there's more information from CPRD. I want to continue, when we have that information, to have a dialogue with Michelle so that we can talk further about a very important issue. But I don't want to shut off the conversation, and we want to get you as a committee all of the information that you think you need to really say what are the risks and what is the risk tolerance for what are the impacts on the project. So jump in and talk some more if you want to ask questions, or as we go, feel free to get back to her, or me, or to Tim. Tim?
And again, our the next meeting is early August. I don't know positively whether there'll be decisions from there, but I'll be glad to come back to the August meeting of this group to update you. Because again, if September's our timeline, we're going to want your view prepared for the OTC's information prior to that time. So.
Other questions?
I got a question.
Please.
When you're talking about the impacts to FES and an update, if we keep the corridor the same, won't there be an impact on an acute economic impact on the clinic not being able to be built? Would that be incorporated in the FES if we kept the current corridor? Or is that a consideration?
I don't know. I don't know how that would be viewed, because if we bought within the current right-of-way, we already have all the authorizations we need to do that. I don't know how any I don't.
Like, would that be
it would be a kind of an economic opportunity impact, but I don't know how. I don't know. That's an interesting question, but I don't know.
And if we move it,
that's certainly kind of what the commission's trying to evaluate is what's the trade-off here.
And if we move it, the impact is more of a recreational impact and an economic on the golf course.
Yeah, but it's not that clear cut, because the recreational impact is defined in law. Section 4F determines that we have to mitigate for that. The economic impact is, at least from the public standpoint, just a dollar impact. We pay for it. it's a little more elaborate if there's a section 4F impact.
So, in this conversation, there wasn't any alternative properties or locations that they would build?
We broached that subject with them, and right now their stance is no. They apparently had evaluated, and I'm just speaking from memory of what occurred in the meeting, they evaluated 3 or 4 other locations within the kind of Newburgh, McMinnville, Yamhill County area, and this was the one that, out of all of those, that met their requirements, and I think there are not others. Is that your recollection, Doug?
Yeah, they had commented, within Newburgh, they looked at 3 potential locations. Their service area, well, Oregon Clinic has a facility that's in Tualatin, and that service area actually extends all the way to the coast. So they were looking in Yamhill County to establish a facility that would capture Newburgh, McMinnville, and then out to the coast. So they looked at 3 within the Newburgh area. One was an industrial piece, didn't fit. 2 were commercial. One of those happened to be the Worth property. This is where they finally focused on. They initially, when we were looking at tax lots 202, this little southern piece of 3,900, it was kind of 4 pieces put together. They were looking at 2 buildings. Now they're looking at 1 building. It's about 16,000 square feet in size. The project cost is roughly $10 million for it, and the jobs, I'll give a range of between 50 to 100 jobs associated with it. So that's kind of the economics of all of it. So what we're looking at from at least the city's perspective is how can we make this corridor work, get this road alignment in here, and capture Oregon Clinic for a new facility within the community, knowing that with the hospital there, we're going to continue as we move forward over the decades, have more pressure with more medical services, one of our key industry sectors, and they'll want to cluster around the hospital. So how do we make all of those pieces work? And then still with the 4F issue is how do you make CPRD and Shale and Glen whole, and what does that mean? So those are the kind of the balls we're all juggling at the same time to try to make it work.
Well put.
Other questions? So, Tim, normally we look at schedules at the end of the meeting, but I know there's some folks need to leave, and I just wanted to have the committee think about this. Normally, we would meet on the 18th of August. With the things in play, it might be worthwhile making that on maybe the 25th. I also have a reason that I'm long gone on that week of the 18th, I think. But I'm really thinking about it as much about you've got a meeting in early August. There may be more meetings, and I think sometimes moving it out a little bit, the more information the committee has, perhaps the better. And if we're going to talk about September, the Transportation Commission, I think, meets on the 3rd Thursdays also, so it would be on the 15th. And it may be as late as that before we have a decision point, but clearly I hope no later, Michelle. I'm just looking at you probably can't second guess it, but trying to tie our schedule to be responsive to this whole opportunity. Mary Andrews even said, are we going to have an August meeting this year? And I said, with all the things in play, I think it's pretty hard to say that we won't have. But what would that look? Do you have any comments, Tim, in terms of that?
I don't. Again, we'll make every effort to meet and provide you as much update on your timeline as we can.
So, Mike, the CPRD's got some things to be thinking about, and it's going to take some time. What's your thoughts?
It's impossible for me to do calendar thinking until we really know what alignment is.
Yeah.
And we can get the golf course, the design consultants really focused. So, you know, our timeline will be based on
How soon you get that, and
how soon we get that.
but more time is perhaps better unless it's gonna be so late that it doesn't matter and we may just need to have a special meeting of the Parkway Committee meeting on a different schedule in September, who knows?
Well, if we're gonna have this thing put together so that documents can be done for presentation on the 19th of September to the OTC, we probably, these pieces are gonna need
Well,
to be together
now,
by.
your response doesn't necessarily need to meet that timeline. My documents to the OTC do. I would think your official Parkway response could, can, I think, get there the week before and it wouldn't be open.
But I think there has to be some connectivity between what you're gonna report to OTC and what we've all decided is.
Well, that would be the crux of my update to you. I would see that as just information for you to prepare your response.
Yeah, and I think it's the 15th, and so their packet goes out the week before, doesn't it?
Well, I think that the director's office needs to have something final, at least from whatever we're gonna do, probably that week of August 22nd through there is what I think.
Yeah.
The OTC meeting's the 14th and the 15th in Newport, so.
Do what you do?
The September 14th and 15th is the September meeting for OTC
In Newport.
in Newport.
And the packet would need to be put together for the commission by when?
I just guessing, but I'm thinking the week of August 22nd, they like to have stuff.
Oh, that far ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Now, you're gonna report in Newport or in Portland?
No, it's at the OTC meeting, so it would be in Newport.
Okay, well, I thought the one on the 19th was in Hillsborough or?
In August, we wouldn't be going to the August meeting, we just have to have information ready.
Well, the OTC meets on the Thursday, which is the 15th of September.
Okay. I thought what we were talking yesterday.
No, that's a totally different meeting. That's the
I think that's,
legislative meetings.
yeah, the Special Joint Transportation Committee meeting.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I misidentified it.
Well, too many meetings, Commissioner.
I'm just trying to make sure that I'm.
Well, if this packet has to go out early in the week of the 22nd of August, I mean, there's just no way, some of the things that are gonna get done and the Federal Highway and CPRD is probably likely to get done by that. I mean, so what happens if the packet, if certain information gets, or a recommendation from this committee comes out after the commission packet goes out? Is that they're gonna listen whenever it comes out, aren't they? I mean, if we have a meeting on whatever day after that.
I guess I have a question is the bottom line, this, reopening this will extend, this is what I'm saying, will extend the time that it would take to get the bypass installed.
I guess I can't speak to that because it really comes down that is going to be much more determined by when we actually have construction funding.
Exactly.
Well, so you posed the question, is the committee going to support realignment or not support realignment? Is that kind of, but right now there's a lot of issues floating and that's why you'd want to do an August meeting to come to consensus?
It just seems to me like it is really too early to even have a way to measure if there are risks and what those are. I mean, we haven't even got an alignment that's gone to Federal Highway to find out whether they say this is an easy decision, it's bulletproof, or we're going to reopen it. And how do we as a committee act responsibly if we don't have some of that information, knowing, as Mike said, we don't know when we're going to get it. But we do know that it needs to happen by September. Given what's going on with the legislation.
I'm not sure we'll have anything definitive from Federal Highway even by that September date, even if we had an alignment today, to tell you, simply because a definitive answer from Federal Highway is gonna require public outreach and all of those issues. But what we're trying to get from them is their best professional read on what the impact is. And I still want to sit down with them and almost base it on, if it's this big, is it, where's that line? If is 4 acres enough, or is 9 acres, if there's any impact, does that throw us into a problem? Or is 10 acres within the boundaries? And I still haven't gotten a clear read from them on that.
And when you talk about Federal Highway, is that Portland, or does it then have to, whatever Portland says, somebody up in
Salem, actually, the regional.
But then somebody in Washington DC, I don't know how that works, Michelle.
So, Tim, and I think I have this correct, but tell me if I'm wrong. If the alignment doesn't change and stays the way it is, the fact that some period of time, almost 5 years has passed, as Tim says, there has to be some kind of a conversation with FHWA again to say, has anything cropped up that's remarkably different than when we did this analysis before? So was there an avalanche, and did boulders go through a creek? Did something happen in this intervening time period wherein ODOT would have to go to FHWA and report that and say, we've looked at this, we don't think it's a big deal, we can mitigate it this way and everything's fine? That would be kind of a agency to agency internal discussion. ODOT is respected by FHWA. ODOT makes recommendations. Unless ODOT, FHWA looks at what ODOT has told them and says, well, that's completely wrong, which would be highly unusual. It would be more of an internal conversation agency to agency. So that's just it's a reevaluation. It still looks the same to us. Looks like we should be able to proceed. Conversation doesn't require any kind of formal documented sign-off by FHWA. It's a conversation. If the alignment changes in any material way, where an ODOT determines that there is a significant impact of some kind, that's a different conversation with FHWA. And it can take the form of a conversation. It can take the form of there's a finding of no significant impact. ODOT can determine that maybe they need to do what's called an environmental assessment, which does become a public process. So a lot of it just depends on Tim and Kelly's team and Sonny's team and the engineering work that's being done by Jerry and the environmental work that's being done by ODOT to kind of look at this and say, what does this mean to us? What are our determinations? And then they need to share those with FHWA. So I think that's the way this works.
I think that's true. The one caveat I would place on that is the Section 4F issue may change how the mere discussion of a change whether in a de minimis status may prompt a public hearing. I don't know that. That's the fly in the ointment that I really don't know the impact to. Section 4F is very strictly defined, and there may be some outreach that has to occur.
Okay, other questions or comments?
So, Dave, I'm
Mike?
looking at the calendar in response to your concern about when the Parkway Committee meets. And what I'm seeing on the calendar is we may not have all the information we want by August 18, which is our next scheduled meeting, and we certainly want to meet before September 15 so we can give input to the commission. So one of the options you have is to take the August 18 meeting, move it out 2 weeks to September 1, and make that both our August and September meeting.
And, I think that's a good point, Mike, and time helps us because it just gives this committee a lot more information, and Tim and his people that opportunity to work on this. And it may still mean that we'll have another meeting in September, but I think, Mike, that's a good suggestion. Is there any reason anybody couldn't be available on September 1st? We've got a meeting on
September 1st.
September 1st would be a Thursday. I can move what I have. And I really think it's particularly important also to have Mayor Olson and Mayor Andrews here as part of this conversation.
There might be we have an 8-day board meeting, that might be a little challenge. We don't have an exact odds are I could be here.
You get started early and
We usually start about 8, but it hasn't been precisely scheduled.
okay. Anybody else have a problem with that, Commissioner?
It's already on my calendar.
Okay,
37.
all right, so we'll just set that right now. We'll make special notices to people that our meeting will be on September 1, right here at 7:30.
So not the August
And there will, and I will
18th or
make a
20th.
point of making sure there will not be a meeting on August 18th. Is that the right date?
And we may want to skip the September 15 meeting, which we don't.
And we'll decide on, that's a good point, we'll decide on September 1st whether we need that September 15th meeting, which would be the day of, but before the OTC probably would start that morning, but we could get any information if we
Until I
have.
say the OTC's meeting on the 14th and 15th.
14th and 15th
So they meet on the 14th and 15th?
in September.
Okay. But a lot of their action items are on that Thursday.
Yeah, they generally put the public portion of the calendar on the 15th,
Okay.
on the second day.
Okay, so, done. I want to take a minute, and Michelle's outside for, we'll report on lobbying funding, but I wanted to give Stan Hallie an opportunity to report on some action that the Lad Hill Neighborhood Association taken. I've read it, I'm delighted, but it's you did it, and Stan, let give you the opportunity to report on that.
I'll go fast since there's so much on the agenda. At the last meeting, the June meeting, we said we looked at all the letters that you guys had presented to the OTC and asked if it would be helpful. We also put in our 2 cents to that, and I will pass around copies of it if I have enough. Essentially, we are in full support of what the OTC has done, both in terms of $7.5 million and $10.5 million in terms of the STIP improvement reallocation. So we just wanted to state that, and that would go out to all of the parties involved, including Director Garrett.
And so you're all getting copies of the letter. Thank you. This is the kind of ongoing activity and actions and support that are really important to the commission and then also just to reaffirm to them the validity and the importance of the action they took on the STIP.
Right.
Thank you very much.
So our board was unanimous in support.
Terrific. Questions of Stan? Michelle, we just were pointing out the letter that Lad Hill sent to the OTC. I'll let you take a moment on that, but I just wanted to go back now on the summit strategies and lobbying efforts. We are closing in on our goal to get to the number of approximately doubling our lobbying budget for 2016-17, and I have one more significant call to make to a McMinnville entity on why they ought to be a big player in this funding effort, and that will happen next Thursday at 8 a.m., and I've been invited to go there and have that conversation, and so I think we will get to that doubling or very close, and I just want to thank Michelle and everything that she and Christine have done this past year, and I want to thank Brett and ADEC, and particularly Austin Industries and Ken Austin for their contribution during this past year. And you know, Michelle has been working really hard on this whole right-of-way issue, and I know that Ken has been a big player in that at no insignificant cost, and so we're absolutely delighted that he's been a part of making that happen. And whether it results in a particular exchange, all of that has been a very valuable part of this whole right-of-way issue and getting us into the STIP and moving us forward. So please relay, and I'll drop Ken a note about how much. Yeah,
that'd be great.
How much we really appreciate his ongoing involvement, because it has made a lot of things possible that we don't even hear about publicly. And so thank you very much. Yep. So please do express that, and I will drop Ken a note. So I think we're going to get there on that. We're past 8:30, but that's all right. We've got Michelle and Tim, and anybody have questions that want to jump in while we've got them here?
It says 9 o'clock on this anyway.
Hmm?
It says we have till 9 o'clock on the agenda.
Oh, well, good, then we're 20 minutes early. I cover myself a little bit for that, but I think we typically try to be efficient.
But he's writing with me, so.
Yes.
We gotta go.
So, other things?
I have a question of Tim, though. I mean,
Please.
And I had a constituent make a comment about 8th Street, about how you've done the nice road over the bypass that goes over 8th Street and Dundee Landing. But there's a section of like 200 feet or something of old road. Is there any plans to like make that kind of mesh better together? Or are you just
Old
gonna,
road between the edge of, on the north
where
side?
where that subdivision is and we're heading towards?
No, there's
That's frustrating. And then the next question is like on the road that you rebuilt along the Newburgh raised bridge. There's a brand new road. I think is it water or river? I can't remember the name of the road, but it has like 8-foot sidewalks on one side and 6-foot sidewalks on another, and no houses or whatsoever over there. Why was that
the
built up?
frontage road that's to the,
It parallels the bridge. It's a brand new road that was just built and paved and new curb and sidewalks. And that seems so overbuilt that you would build something like that with no houses next to it or anything else. Yet you won't finish the 200 feet on 8th Street. So that to me kind of sits under my craw a little bit about that. I don't know is there any way we can get that section finished?
My way I understand is when you're coming from River Street and you're going west on Waverly on the new cul-de-sac street, the wide sidewalk that's on the south side of that is actually part of the bypass trail.
Yeah.
So that's why it's wider on the south side,
Right.
and then you have the standard sidewalk width on the north side.
and the cross-section was to meet Newburgh's section of requirements for a new road in that area. The fact that there's no houses there is just that they are building. I mean,
Someday.
you know,
Well, there won't be any houses on the bypass side. That's the side
Well,
that's
right.
8-foot sidewalk. He says that's because it's the trail.
Yeah, so that, the whole bypass trail, and so that piece that's within Newburgh on the south side of Waverly, they put in the wider sidewalk, so that'd be part of that trail system. So we'll have the trail in part from Winooski, going along 11th, it goes underneath the bridge and then connects to Waverly when you get to the end of the cul-de-sac, so we'll have that piece of that trail in place with the bypass.
Okay.
and I can't really speak to why 8th was never part of the negotiation. I honestly don't recall it.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? So, Tim, are you and Kelly available on that September 1st date?
Yes.
Good. I don't know if you had stepped out for a moment, Michelle. The next meeting is going to be on September 1st. Moved it out 2 weeks to give ourselves as much opportunity to get information before that meeting. And we can talk further about that. But
Parkway committee meeting?
Mhm.
Okay.
Good, okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, before
Yes.
before we move on, I'd like to note that in this letter that we just received, Steve Rhodes is praised. And I think there's an interesting wrinkle about how the city recognized Steve Rhodes as he was leaving. And I think Joe or Doug might mention the transportation-related street naming they did for Steve Rhodes. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's just that Steve, over his whole career, never had a road name after before. So, Mayor Andrews took a little piece that's right across, behind City Hall and across the street from the new fire station, and it's now, Rhodes Way, and he got his
great.
sign there, so.
Rhodes Way is an alley.
Yeah. It's a different kind of bypass.
It's
Just
a transportation corridor.
Yes, it is.
It relates to this, it relates to Parkway. It's transportation.
Well, good for him. Any road's better than no road, so. That's great. Okay. With that, thank you, everybody. We are adjourned and look forward to talking and a lot more conversations.
Was that a pun intended?
Yeah, it was.
You're in Washington, D.C.